I'm going to lead off with a little bit more about details about the burden of musculoskeletal disorders, and I guess the bottom line there is right on the slide. Musculoskeletal disorders are the leading cause of disability, both nationally and globally. I also, on behalf of the Northern Musculoskeletal mob, want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on today, the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. But before I launch into all the statistics about the burden, just want to look at a little personal story as to why should I dare to dream that we could or we should cure arthritis. So here you see there's my dad, Ron March, tall, strong Ron. There's my mum, Gwen, short but equally strong Gwen, on their honeymoon. So they, young school teachers, moved to the country, northern New South Wales, to start their family. Always supported me, loved me unconditionally, sent me off to the city. Here we are, graduating from the University of Sydney, first class honours, allowed to stand on the lawn in the quadrangle for the first time. Maybe not the first time, but don't tell. Very proud. First of my family to study medicine, and in fact first female from Port Macquarie Public High School to come to the city and study medicine. But fast forward, or rather slow journey forward, 40 years. And Mum and Dad, die-hard Rabbitohs supporters, but there they are. My dad in a wheelchair. And in fact, he was riddled with arthritis. In fact, he had several different types of arthritis, but lived in a world of pain in his last 12 months of his life, to the point that, in fact, his arthritis killed him. He had so much inoperable damage in his knees and his ankles and his feet that he could not get out of bed. He developed pneumonia and fortunately passed away very peacefully in his sleep. But that is one of the many things that drives me. We should be able to cure it. Couldn't help him in his lifetime. I hope all these bright young people will be able to help some of us in our lifetimes. So, the burden. What are the musculoskeletal disorders? So, as I've said on the video, there's more than 150 different types of arthritis, and the autoimmune diseases and lupus and connective tissue diseases, scleroderma, some very common, some quite rare, but all of them can affect our bones, our muscles, our tendons, our ligaments and our joints. And the musculoskeletal mob here look after and research into many of those, and you're going to hear about a lot of that now. But I think one of the very important things is that every patient has a very different journey. So one type of condition, and we think, right, you've got osteoarthritis, but that might be actually very mild osteoarthritis and you hardly notice it, or might be extremely severe. And same with rheumatoid, maybe very mild, little impact on your life. But for other people, it affects the whole body. It affects every organ in the body. You can die from your arthritis in the very severe forms. And in fact, almost every musculoskeletal condition in its very severe form, you can die from it. So it is quite challenging when a patient's diagnosed with a condition to then say, what is that patient's journey going to be? What is the best treatment going to be for that patient? Because that's the other thing. There's very marked variability in how the particular patient will respond to treatment, and that's both how well they do in terms of benefit, but also if it's going to harm them or get an adverse effect. So the patient, the individual patient, what we do for them is so important, and try to work out what that right thing is for them. So what are the global burden of disease conditions? So global burden of disease, or GBD as we often refer to it, was revived around 2005 and funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So a very big international collaboration to measure all the diseases in the world with the same measurement, so we could compare. I was fortunate enough to lead the musculoskeletal, and we had a fantastic team based here that developed all that original data that is now ongoing as the burden of disease. But we looked looked at back pain, neck pain, osteoarthritis of hip and knee. And actually, we all know that osteoarthritis can affect every joint in the body. So the hands, the neck, the spine, the feet. So this is just some of the osteoarthritis that's out there in the world. Rheumatoid arthritis, gout, and other musculoskeletal, which is the other group. So psoriatic arthritis, lupus, pain syndromes, fibromyalgia, a lot of other arthritis. And for the first time, we included low bone density. Now, osteoporosis, which is also a very important musculoskeletal condition, which we don't have a big focus on today because there's just so much to cover. But for the first time, we looked at low bone density as a risk factor for fracture and disability. This is some of the team that are here photographed on the Colling steps, but I'll particularly acknowledge Marita Cross, who's still leading this with the group at University of Washington in Seattle and taking the 4 a.m. phone calls because of all the international timing. So she's keeping on track for us to still keep them honest and make sure that they have musculoskeletal well represented. Just a very basic stats 101 when we throw around some data about how to measure burden. We talk about disability burden, and that's our YLDs, years lived with disability. So this is a measurement that tries to say, well, how many people have the condition and what impact does it have on them in a daily life, their pain, their suffering, loss of physical function, impact on mental functioning as well. That's an estimate of that. And we would argue certainly that they're the group living with the condition and impacted by a condition that are the biggest impact on their daily lives and also on the health system and society. Then we also talk about DALYs, the disability adjusted life years, which combine that disability component, but also now add in the years life lost from disability. So musculoskeletal disorders affect 1 in 3 Australians. So almost 7 million Australians have an MSK problem. It's one of the most common reasons for accessing healthcare, at least almost 10% of the total health expenditure, and $6 billion. A lot of those dollars are related to very effective total hips and knee joint replacement surgery if they're given to the right person at the right time. But you'll hear later from the group the amazing work that they're doing here to address some of that so that it does get to the right person at the right time. But we've also heard, loss of work, sick leave, needing to retire early, and also amazing out-of-pocket costs. So people who live with an arthritic condition have a lot. I mean, we've got a fantastic healthcare system, and lots is supported, but people who live with a chronic condition have lots of extra costs that they have to contribute to, but reduced income from there because of it. So major poverty cycle in some instances and widening of the social inequalities. There we go. Okay, so is arthritis and musculoskeletal problems something just old people get? Well, I think this is certainly trying to highlight to you that in this purple segment here, that musculoskeletal disorders across all ages, so affects men, women and children of all ages. If we stop and say, well, how much disability is there in Australia? So if we imagine that this box is all the disability in Australia. This is how the GBD, the people in Seattle, are represented if you visit their website, which you can do. Red represents infectious diseases, child and maternal health in this box. Green is all injury. The rest in blue are the chronic diseases. So chronic diseases are really the biggest burden of disability, but the biggest single group are musculoskeletal. So leading, number one, 20% of Australia's burden of disease, the disability in Australia is musculoskeletal, followed by mental health, then injury. And then if we just kind of have a quick look and see where has the government invested in research funding recently, cancer, about $1 billion over the last 5 years for research. Cardiovascular, fantastic new cardiovascular health mission being led by Gemma Figtree here at North Shore, 220 million. Million Minds, health research for mental health research, 125 million over the next few years. Arthritis, 4 million. Osteoporosis, 3 million, and that's not even all for research. But you will hear we're still doing amazing stuff despite not getting that. So maybe we're the next cab on the rank. We hope. We keep pushing. But you will hear that we're doing good stuff without the funding, but some more is always good. So if you drill down then on what is all that musculoskeletal burden, we look here, low back pain. This is looking at, the top 25 health conditions out of 250 that they measured. Low back pain, number one. You'll hear some great work from Manuela Ferreira, who's leading our back pain research. Falls, number two, also a major musculoskeletal problem. Other musculoskeletal, number 8. Neck pain, number 13. Osteoarthritis, hip and knee, number 18. So way up there in the top 20 of all the conditions. And low bone density. If we now look at that, as I said, we looked at that for the first time, low bone density, 35% of falls mortality is related to low bone density and thin and brittle bones and the fractures that they get. And it's preventable, it's reversible. It's preventable in the first place, but then reversible once you get it. Even road traffic injury, so the deaths from road traffic injury, if you're over 50, nearly 10% of the deaths from a road traffic injury is from low bone density. And once you get over 80, it's 40% of the deaths attributable to low bone density. So a very important area that requires more effort. Okay, so what are we doing about all of this? Part of our vision is this biobank, okay? Australian Collaborative, we're leading it here at the Colling. I see one of the other key people here, Geraldine Hassard, visiting from Liverpool, and Geraldine's the chair of the musculoskeletal group from Sphere, the University of New South Wales. So thank you for coming, Geraldine. And we're collaborating with other key scientists and clinicians around Australia. Great local team. Craig Willers, our National Director, Tom Lynch, our National Project Officer, and the other scientists that you'll hear from. We've also got a great group of patient research partners. We've got Jim and Kate with us today, but another group it's been quite a journey to get the governance set up and the ethics and getting it right so that the patients do want to start, but we're ready to start. Got the patients, we're going to collect lots and lots of data. We're going to do some very clever analytics, and we're here, hopefully, when we're back in a few years' time, we'll be telling you about how we've got the predictive tools. We know who to give the treatment to, the right person at the right time, and we're moving towards a cure for arthritis and autoimmunity. So I thank you for listening. A special thanks to Marita and Tom, who helped me with the slides, and let's all keep moving. Thank you.